Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Worth Fighting For. I'm Brian. I'm joined, as always, by Tamur. Tamur, how you doing?
Doing well, Brian. Doing well. I know you're a little under the weather or have a sore throat. Sorry to hear that. But
Yep.
luckily, this is an audio-based medium, so
Mhm.
you'll be
Yeah, as
good.
a man with a cold, like I would have been right in that hospital next to Ellie with her collapsed lung,
Right?
perhaps for even longer than 3 months.
Yes. Yeah. She went through this horrible trauma, and you're just like still there after 3 months, waving her. All right.
She's like, yeah, I can't breathe. Collapsed lung. You're like, yeah. Sometimes it's like a little like phlegmy, kind of. You know,
It's like
it's,
allergies. What are you talking about?
it's
It's in the middle
pretty
of summer.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. But yeah,
So,
good
I
episode.
guess,
Good
what do you
episode.
think?
I thought it was good. I mean, kind of for me, ups and downs. I would say. I think I should sort of preface my notes and thoughts by just saying like, overall, I love this show, even when I'm like sort of nitpicky and kind of trying to think about alternatives to these scenes. And I at least hope that I can kind of like voice some thoughts that other people are having, and they can kind of think like, oh yeah, I did have a little bit of like a thought like that, and we can kind of expand on them. So you know the big kind of question that I went into it was like, what do I expect going into this episode, coming off of the craziness from last week, right? And my first thought was really like, how are they going to make this episode not super depressing and sad and kind of just a lot of grief, a lot of anger. How do they avoid that? And they actually did a like almost. I think they almost like overcompensated. Kind of curious to hear what you thought, but we get this. I don't know how long it's been. It seems like a few months almost. Um,
Yeah, it says 3 months later after the
okay.
title card.
Okay, I
So
must have been looking away at that exact second, but yeah, so 3 months. I mean, that's a long time for someone to kind of be processing this. So I actually think it was kind of a missed opportunity not to see Ellie at her most. I mean, you get a bit of that where she's in the hospital and she's screaming and kind of has this flashback, which I'm glad we at least got that. But even so, that's in essence, that's basically a repeat of the scene we just got from last episode. So I think I wanted more. I actually wanted to kind of face the sadness, face the grief, and instead, what we kind of got was Ellie kind of back to her normal, sarcastic, like teenage self. Like basically right off the bat, she talks to the therapist, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm all good. Which obviously we know she's lying about that, and she has ulterior motives just to leave the hospital. But um, I didn't kind of get a sense from that scene that Ellie was like really that angry and grief stricken. And even throughout the episode, I kind of was missing that. I don't know what you thought.
yeah, it's not quite as raw. I believe in the game, and this is light spoilers for the game. I know we do like full spoilers, but I don't think this is more just a comparison point. So anybody who's listening who
Mm-hmm.
hasn't played the game, don't worry. I'm not like spoiling anything too crazy. In the game, I believe she sets out like the next day or like within like a
Yeah.
week, right? Like it's very, very soon, very fresh in her mind and in everyone's mind. Whereas this, I did think it was interesting. Jackson's so advanced compared to the game, and the game is still very advanced. But like Jackson, I mean, they have like a hospital and like doctors and like I know she's like, I'm the only therapist, but still having like a therapist is like pretty big in like the apocalypse. And
Yeah.
they're playing like little league t-ball, and it's like I definitely get a little bit back to the infected not being that threatening in
Right.
this, but I guess like the biggest reason I can see them doing this is they kind of want to give like a explanation as to why like more people wouldn't go and try to avenge Joel. Where the lost so many people during the
Mm-hmm.
last episode to where they're just getting back to like where they were and they are not like particularly keen to go out there and fight. Whereas in the game, obviously the horde stuff doesn't happen in the
Mhm.
same way, and they still don't send out like a whole group. Like Tommy wants to, but they
Right.
don't do it. But that doesn't stop them from just being like, okay, we're just gonna go ourselves. Where it really felt like they did not want Dina and Ellie to leave. Like they wanted it, and only Seth was like really the only one who was like 100% on board with like, yeah, we need to like get revenge. Like we can't show
Yeah.
weakness. I don't think it's because he cared particularly for Joel, especially. I think he more cared like these people did this fucked up shit to us. We need to get our like lick back,
Right.
you know?
Right. So that's what's interesting. I mean, it's like the homophobe is actually like he's like redeeming himself in like the worst way, where it's like obviously, an eye for eye makes the world blind, and yet this guy's like he's basically on Ellie's side. But Neil Druckmann, the writer of the original game, he's really kind of the king of humans are complicated and everybody has multiple sides, and clearly that's what they're doing with what's his name, Bill,
Seth.
Seth. Yes, that's what they're doing with Seth, and then obviously he helps them and gives them better weapons and everything
Mm.
later on. And um, I was kind of like, I was kind of conflicted on that, and I think that is purposely that is the reaction that Neil Druckmann wants. Is like, you know, this guy, you kind of start to warm up to him because he's supporting Ellie, yet he's supporting her worst inclination. He's supporting this revenge mission, which, you know, really is a bad idea if the town is still rebuilding and they need everyone they can get, especially these, the younger generation. And anyway, I just think, yeah, for me, like I needed to see more anger and also like sorrow from Ellie. And I just think like at this moment, especially, she should be like peak anger, and you really do get that more so in the game where she's like, and you got it in the first ever trailer that we ever saw for Last of Us Part Two, which was Ellie was saying, I'm going to kill every single last one of them.
Yeah.
Um, but we kind of
You
get,
got a rampage as Ellie in
yeah,
that game. Like it's
which
insane.
yeah, and I'm sure we will see that, or at least elements of that. But um, I think I wanted to see that right in this episode. Really see like a big change in her personality, instead of just kind of seeing like, okay, here's the Ellie we've come to expect, which is like a sassy teenager. um,
Right.
so yeah, but I mean, in terms of kind of grieving, I mean, they do give us a chance to grieve, like in two particular scenes in this episode. For Joel, like you go to his house and you see all these, these sort of these traits of his, where it's like, oh, he was woodworking and he was almost like kind of in this retirement phase of his life, which you know we kind of mentioned it last week on the podcast. You get that in the game, which is amazing because obviously in this game you're in control and you can take as much time as you want and really soak up these details. And I think a lot of people have done that. Yes, as I've seen like it in posts online, people really are still like attached to his house in an interesting way.
Mm.
um, and then the second time is, of course, when Ellie actually goes to his grave, which this is also different from the game, where um, not really a spoiler, but in the game, his grave is basically, it's kind of near his house. I think it's like
Yeah, it
walking
seems like the
distance.
graveyard's in Jackson versus
Yeah,
like
exactly.
10 miles away.
Right, right. Which is interesting. I mean, the shot is beautiful and kind of the scenery and everything. Um, but that was, yeah, I was kind of curious why maybe it was just a practical thing or something. But yeah, so it was nice that we had time to grieve him ourselves in some way. I kind of wish they had Ellie do that more so, but
Yeah, the one that really, really got me was the cold open when the woman's like cleaning the bodies of all the dead, and
mhm.
then Tommy comes in and he's like cleaning Joel's body and he sees like the watch from the very
Mhm.
first episode that Sarah gave her, and he's like, give Sarah my love, like to his brother. Like
Yeah,
that was so
that
sad.
line. Yeah, no, that
Uh,
line broke me. That was
yeah.
like
How good
that was, I
is
think.
the actor who plays Tommy? Like, I was just thinking about
Oh,
that
yeah.
this whole episode. Like, this guy's so good.
Yeah, oh, he's great, and he's really gonna have to kind of, like, obviously, Ellie's leaving Jackson, but I think, we will see more Tommy, in the future, and I think he's gonna kind of have to carry some of Pedro Pascal's,
Yeah.
grit and kind of, keep some of that in the show, and I think the actors will have no problem doing that. But yeah, the way I kind of like was rewriting it in my head, like I really wanted Ellie to be really angry and distraught, and then I think they could have easily worked this in because, of course, Dina kind of like volunteers to go along, and like we've mentioned in past episodes, Dina has a lot of incentive to go because she was there and she knows these names and everything now. Um, but I was kind of thinking it in a different way. I was like, what if they had, Ellie's like beyond this, beyond angry and beyond everything else, and just is on this, revenge mission, and Dina really like brings her back, and kind of instead of having this therapist who's like for some reason sitting in the outfield drinking beers. I'm like, she's like the crazy. She's like the crazy cat lady in the neighborhood, like drinking
Yeah.
beers, getting drunk, sitting in the outfield. Like she definitely should not be. But
Yeah. She's,
so
she's
I mean,
not
that's
thinking any of these T-ballers are going to be hitting it too
no,
far.
yeah,
She even
exactly.
compares them to the 2003 Detroit Tigers, who one of like the most legendary bad baseball teams, who went 43 and 119 in that season. Just like one of the worst teams ever. This is very
Yeah, no,
funny.
she's like hoping that all of these kids are like basically that guy. But yeah. So anyway, I'm kind of rewiring it, in that I think it would have been more interesting if Ellie was really kind of beyond consoling, and Dina was the one who actively kind of brought her back, and
Mm.
I think it would have also strengthened their relationship. Um, yeah.
Yeah, what did you think of Dina and Ellie in this episode? I mean, obviously Dina gives Ellie the information that she has, works with Seth to get the gear, and then I don't know. There's like kind of like a weird like will thee won't thee, which is very different from the game where they're like already established together
Right.
by the time they go to Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does make sense building kind of a season arc in terms of like just television. I think it does make more sense to kind of build that relationship up rather than just have two characters who are together and traveling together. So I actually I don't mind it. I think they're both going to have to kind of like the chemistry is going to have to feel very real. And right now, what I'm kind of getting from Ellie is she's like too nervous to even like make any moves, and kind of very hesitant because Dina's clearly stated like, I'm not gay. Um, so it's interesting. I'm kind of curious where they want to go with that. I mean, clearly, you know, they're traveling companions, and I guess this is maybe a small spoiler, but in the game, I guess you just mentioned it. They are a
Yeah, I just
couple.
said it. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, so they are clearly going to work up to that.
Mhm.
How quickly they're going to do that, and how it'll be interesting. I think I think we're in for a lot of violence, so that's why
Yeah,
I'm kind of like, how are they going to find love and kind of compassion for one another in that environment? Yeah, the butt end of the episode. I mean, we got to look at the Seraphites, and we get a lot of a lot of carnage there. My God,
yeah.
it's
I love what they're doing with the Seraphite so far.
yeah.
I can't get into it until we go fully into the spoiler part,
Mhm.
but I really enjoyed what we saw in this episode of them and like building up the wolves even more as like this, here's this group that's like very post-apocalyptic and like they have scars on their faces and
Mhm.
like you'd think, oh man, they're scary and they're like terrified of the wolves. the wolves
Yeah,
have guns. In fairness, um,
right, right.
so
Yeah. And honestly, the first when we first saw that first like bald man, I was like, that guy's straight up from the video game. Like he just
yeah,
looks like
right.
all of the like big guys that take like so much longer to kill and everything. And
With the
um,
sledgehammers instead of the regular
yeah,
hammers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that was like awesome when when I saw him, I was like, oh my god, the surf fights are like in this early, which is
Mm,
crazy. And you got to wonder what this small group is, why they're traveling. Did they leave the bigger group? Did what for what reason? Like where are they going? And ultimately, who killed them? I mean, we kind of they kind of hint that it's the WLF or the Wolves, but um, who knows? There's so many different elements out here in Seattle, and I don't know. I did kind of find it silly though. That I think it's the very last shot of the episode where you get like the tanks and then like all this huge group of WLF walking down the street. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one, but I did think that was almost just like a little bit like silly, just from
much. Yeah.
like a conceptual standpoint of like why are they all just walking down a street like holding guns? Like it
I
looks
guess, yeah, they just wanted to like make them seem like a big threat.
yeah
Whereas in the
right.
game, and I think probably more realistic to what the situation is like, it's very urban warfare, and
Hmm.
there are like different groups that are small together. Like, yeah, they wouldn't
Hmm.
just be running out like you know, I don't even
Hmm.
know, like Revolutionary War style, like
Yeah, right.
walking.
That's what, like yeah, it's like what it reminds like they're going to war or something, but in the game you get more of like a sense of just their bases, and you do you do realize that they're big in the game as well, but it's in a much more like I don't know, I think it's more like Boston, like
Yeah,
what's the Fedra is it in Boston? It's kind of that vibe of like it's not totally free. It's safe for the people that live there, but you're gonna have to play by their rules, and it's a little bit
yeah,
militaristic, and but that's what it kind of takes to survive. Um, and I think they tried to kind of capture all of that in that one shot, or at least give us a bit of like what's gonna, how the hell is Ellie gonna take on this giant group with guns and all this stuff? So yeah, I don't know. That's probably being over nitpicky, but I did think it was a bit silly. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah. I think it was just shorthand of like, this is a huge group, and we'll
right.
never see them in a group like this again in this
Yeah.
show. But
Right.
they just needed to like communicate to us that
Yeah.
they're a
I will
big
say,
force.
yeah, I will say it was awesome seeing. It was just like that shot of one of Abby's teammates. I forget his name, but he was there. They killed Joel, and
Oh,
he's kind of
Manny.
like, yeah, man. He's like
Yeah,
sitting there and like kind of looking over Seattle. Like that was just such a
yeah. He's
cool,
in
like cinematically.
the was it Space Needle. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
He's
think that's
looking
it. Yeah,
over, which is cool.
yeah, yeah. That was awesome. But yeah, so I do want to go back to the community because I really want to the community voting. What do you call that?
Yeah, the council. That was
Yeah, the
interesting.
council. I really want to hear what your thoughts on that, but I don't know. I just thought like you know it was kind of boring personally, to put it bluntly. It's like it was like very democratic, and I don't know. It seemed almost like a waste of screen time. But yeah,
Yeah,
curious your
I like the world building. It's funny. The Walking Dead also had a like very similar thing where they had a council in the last few seasons
oh
of
yeah.
it. But I think the biggest thing of it will be Jesse probably voted no, and like we'll see
Mhm.
if that like comes out later and if that causes some tension
Right.
between them.
Did they
I
did
think
they show
Jesse's
that?
very much well. I'm just if I'm like trying to play it out, like
Oh.
what's the whole Jesse didn't want to talk to Ellie about it, and then it lost 8-3, and Jesse's like really
Mhm.
being shown as like the next generation leader of
Mhm.
Jackson. He's looking real hot with his like tight shirt, just like rebuilding the place. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, hidden
okay,
in the wood.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll take. Yeah, I take your word for it, just because I mean you're the survivor guy, so the whole voting mechanics and everything. Like when she was reading out the votes, I was like, man, Jeff Probst would have done this so much better.
Yeah, you gotta
She just goes, yes,
you gotta
no.
tally them first, and
Yeah,
then
exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, then you say, okay, two yeses, two no, whatever. Anyway, but
stack them. Yeah,
but it is kind of an interesting exercise to see. Like, do you think Tommy voted yes or what?
I think
Or
Tommy voted yes.
okay, and his wife?
I feel like that's harder to predict. I feel like no,
Mhm,
just from what we know of her from the game slash like, I don't
mhm.
think she'd want Tommy to go out there and like
Yeah,
risk this.
true.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like she's a little bit more responsible, but yeah,
Tommy is his brother. Totally get it. I think most people would be like, yeah, I'm gonna like do that. I'm gonna go after these people who like horrifically murdered my brother. Like
mhm.
feels like a pretty obvious one that Tommy would say yes. And then we just don't know the other people at all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah, but I think there was an interesting line about how Joel would have gone after if they kidnapped someone. He 100% would have gone after them.
yeah,
But if they killed someone close to him, he would not have gone on a revenge mission. And I don't know if that's totally true. Like if they had killed Ellie and the roles were reversed, I think he probably would go after them. If it
I
was
agree.
someone else, maybe not. If it was Tommy or Ellie, I think he definitely would have.
Yeah, maybe Tommy's just telling himself that because he knows like it's not going to go through, and he's like,
Mhm.
"Well, Joe wouldn't do this." It's like, yeah, he would. He
Right.
definitely would. At least the Joel that we know from the
Right.
game, and we seemingly know from the first season of the show.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I mean, he shot up a hospital to
Right.
save Ellie. Like,
Yeah.
you'd think
Yeah.
he wouldn't go do this? Come on.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's like, what would he have to live for? Besides his wood carvings. It's like that. That would be
Yeah,
his his new hobby. But yeah. So I don't know the whole like community building stuff. I do think it's interesting to see just in the context of like post-apocalyptic series how society carries on when so many years pass by from the initial outbreak and everything. But I don't know, something about this scene in particular just felt like because Ellie's reading this speech, but she's clearly lying. Like it's not about
yeah,
the fact that everyone's in danger or a message. This is a revenge mission, just to be clear. Um, and I don't know. It kind of felt like yeah, pointlessly democratic to me. But I don't know.
yeah. Definitely. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Jackson's way more advanced than the
Mhm.
Jackson in the video game, where like it feels like people can pretty much do whatever they want versus like in Jackson it's like we all share everything with each other, but that means we all have to be in agreement on what we do, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if they're
Yeah.
like, oh, we're not doing this, then you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I feel like if I hadn't played the game and I was just kind of watching this season, I think my main thought would be like, how does Jackson, how does this town work? And I think obviously I wouldn't be expecting Joel to die. So I think in my head I would be like, what are Ellie and Joel going to do about like uh, living in society and being normal people when they clearly are both not.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I guess for me it's like it's having so much focus on Jackson is interesting, but it's also like now we're going to leave Jackson and there kind of wasn't too much to do there. Um, so anyway, yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's very different from like a Walking Dead where when they get to Alexandria and Walking Dead, like that's a
Mhm.
part of the story is just like how does Alexandria work? Like what do
Right.
the inner, relationships of all these people, and then
Hmm.
eventually the main group of the comic become like the leaders of this place, and that becomes like the important place. Whereas like a game is very much like, well, we need like you need to be doing stuff, unless it's like
Yeah.
a city builder game. you know,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really
yeah.
focusing on it. It did definitely make me like. I love the Walking Dead show. I think it's it varies a lot. It was really good, and then it was not as good, and then it got like good, and then it like ended kind of. And now they
Mhm,
have tons of spin-offs and everything, but it makes me think of like what could The Walking Dead have been if HBO had bought it, where like
mhm.
they initially brought it to HBO and they said no, and then AMC like got it. Like it would have been
Right,
like so much more high budget and like I don't know if it would have been
totally.
better. It would have been different for sure.
Yeah, oh, 100%. But I think that's I'm glad you said that because, like, I think that's actually you're kind of, like, hitting the point that I was trying to, like, put into words, and I think that is why, to me, this stuff is kinda boring because I think Jackson itself, it doesn't have a solid personality and kind of a it doesn't feel very like lived in
Mhm.
to me, which in the game you don't spend that much time there, so you don't really mind that. It's just kind of like, okay, this is where they lived, and it seemed nice, much nicer than being outside of the walls.
More like
But
Boston in the first
yeah,
game.
yeah,
Like,
so yeah, yeah. I mean, Boston had much more personality. I think even in the show. Um, not saying that every location has to be like some level of danger or whatever, and people are like selling things under the radar, and there's always like terrorist attacks to be aware of. That
yeah,
does add
right.
a lot of character, but I think Jackson just seems like too accurate to like real life or something, and like they're voting, they're like doing this
They
and that.
built
It's like,
back to like
yeah,
much.
they built
Yeah,
back the very next episode. So I don't know, I think they could have kind of done more with that
yeah.
in an interesting way. And yeah, it kind of goes back to like sometimes I think this show gets a little bit distracted by the show being about the characters and not as much about the zombies and the world that is post-apocalyptic. Whereas it'd be nice to get a little bit more of that,
Mhm.
which is not as interesting as building characters and kind of these relationships, but does actually enhance that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it almost feels at odds with itself where it's like we kind of want to be like a Walking Dead show where we kind of have like the first episode with the stalker and like
Mhm.
Ellie and Dina are like, oh shit, they're like smarter infected now. And then it's like,
Right.
oh, how are they gonna react to that? And then it's like, well, that doesn't really matter. They'll
Yeah,
probably
that's like, all
come
right,
back
3 months.
later for Ellie and Dina, but like as far as it being a problem for Jackson, it didn't go anywhere, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Imagine if they kind of like incorporated that in last episode and kind of that giant horde attack. Like
Mhm.
they like the zombies behave in a certain way that's like, oh shit, they're like not just running and tackling, and like they're actually like thinking about how to dodge bullets, and kind of would have
Yeah.
been interesting to incorporate that. And I'm sure we will see that down the road. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I don't have I don't. I do have one prediction moving forward.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that. They've been mentioning Eugene a lot. In
Mhm.
this character we haven't seen yet. Her, Catherine O'Hara's
He will be
character.
in the season. He is casted. He's in the trailer for the
Right.
season. So we'll see what that go where that goes.
I think it might be the next episode, or maybe it'll be the episode after that. Kind of hard to predict that essentially, but I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be like Nick Offerman's episode where you get the
Yeah.
full episode. And you know, my feeling with that is that they really want to justify Joel's death, to give some more points to Abby. So I think we will get a little more backstory with Eugene and Joel, and kind of maybe see how Joel killed him, and it wasn't totally necessary, or he wasn't turning,
We
or
figured out that
yeah,
Joel killed the rest of the fireflies because
right.
he was a firefly. So
Yeah, yeah, that'll make a lot of sense. So I think they might use that to kind of justify his death a little bit. But
yeah,
yeah,
should be fun. Like you said, the actor who played Ralphie in Sopranos is playing him, which is very
hmm,
exciting.
yeah,
Um, Probably one of the best Sopranos characters in my opinion. In a show full
mhm,
of amazing characters.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
he's really stood out. A horrible person, but great character. You know.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
very excited. And then Cypher from the Matrix, if you prefer that, which he's
Right.
also a horrible person, great character.
Right. Right.
So we'll see how Eugene is. I feel like he'll be a good person. Hopefully, a good
Yeah.
character, though. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting seeing this show move forward without Joel and Ellie in that relationship, which I think a lot of people, I think even if they haven't played the games, that's kind of what they tune in for was
Mhm.
that duo specifically. And as much as we love Dina and and Tommy and stuff like that, it's like that I think that's really going to be missing, and something is going to have to like fill in that gap. I think especially for people who haven't played the games.
Yeah, I saw a Reddit thread where someone was like, I was watching the show with the perspective this was Joel's story. And so like last episode really took them off guard. But they were like, I'm excited because I didn't realize it was Ellie's story. I
Mm,
thought it was Joel. But now like it's all flipped around. So I wonder how many people are in the same boat. Like, because yeah,
hmm.
Joel is the main character for the whole first season.
Right,
Um, we even see the before the end of the world, he gets
right,
to have
exactly.
like that whole episode basically. And yeah, Pedro Pascal was amazing. Loved him.
Hmm.
Super sad that he's gone.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we'll definitely get some flashbacks. I would not.
yeah,
I think a lot of people would be disappointed if we don't get. There's one particular, I won't spoil it, but
yeah,
it's a really precious one, and it's just like and to me, there was a lot of blowback, obviously, when Joel died in the game, and my defense a lot of times was like, he's still in the game and like flashbacks, and there's actually
yeah,
a
right.
lot of him still in there. It's just that this was a plot point, but and it's it is Ellie's perspective, but I think we still get like I said, and you maybe perhaps the Eugene episode, and then in flashbacks as well.
Yeah, no, it should be good. And I think that how to say this? Oh, do you want to get into the spoilerish section
Yeah,
so we can talk
do
freely?
sure.
Everybody who's show only watcher, thank you so much for checking it out. We'll see you next week for episode 4. Now we're going to just kind of spitball a little bit more from the game's perspective. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Tommy reintegrates into the story, whereas like in the game he leaves Ellie first. He like tricks Ellie
Right.
and is like, tomorrow we'll go tomorrow, like together, and he leaves without
Hmm.
her. And then like you're
Right.
following Tommy throughout the game,
Right.
and you're following like an absolute, I described Ellie's game as a rampage, but Tommy was really putting work
Oh yeah.
in. Like there's
Yeah.
so many times where you just like come across these tons of dead bodies and
Yeah.
it's like
You're like following a trail
presumably
of blood.
Tommy did this.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, imagine if they did that in the show and it was kind of like they stumbled upon the Seraphites, they would be like,
Mhm.
"Oh shit, Tommy is on a different
Yeah.
level now." Like
Yeah.
that would have kind of been that would have been interesting. It would have kind of added another element of like, wait, did Tommy do this? Did someone else do this?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I do love that in the game before you're like you really understand like all the dynamics where it's like, wait, who the fuck are these people? Like they're fighting these other people, like like who's Abby's
mhm,
group? Who are these other people? Like
mhm,
Tommy's also out here. Like you just don't know everything at
right.
first, and you're just like, it's really cool to come into this situation where you're like, I don't know what's happening, but like, I'm excited to find out.
I know it's kind of crazy because like Seattle is like it's like empty in a sense, but it's also very scary and like it's very alive. But it's like a lot of it's like hidden. And of course, in the
Mhm.
game, like when you go someplace and there's like little details, you can see people who used to live in these apartments or whatever it is, like little places that they were hiding. Um,
Yeah, some of the best stuff are those little like
Oh yeah,
side stories that you don't even have to figure them out, but if you like
right.
take the time, you can. I
Yeah,
love that about these
yeah,
games.
yeah. There's like one. Well, there's like two that still stick out to me after all this time. But like, there's one that's like, it's like clearly like a friends who were like just playing D&D, and like kept playing after the world ended, and who knows what happened to them. But like, they still have like the dice and all the stuff set up when you stumble upon their apartment. And then the other one is, I think this one you get like the ending and or whatever happened to them. But it's like I think it's two apartments like kind of across the street, and they're communicating with each other, and one's saying like, oh, like my mother's sick and stuff like that, and like they're kind of like hang out on the roofs, and it's just so yeah, it's just so great to get the little details of the world. And I hope they do some of that in the show without kind of, it would be hard not to without like kind of showing the characters and having flashback episodes or something. But I hope they have elements of that. Maybe she finds some, like a PS3 or something, and just little details like
Yeah.
that.
Do you think Ellie will kill someone playing a PSP in the show?
I hope so. I mean that not no, I don't hope so, but that is such like an iconic thing, Like I've seen that image so many times where people like switch out the game that she's playing and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Well, it was
So
Hotline Miami, right? In the
I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look
So
that up,
she's
but you
like
keep
listening
talking.
to like yeah, she's like listening to Ice Cube and playing. Oh, she's having like such a chill time, and Ellie fucking comes in, and yeah, but it's yeah, I do hope they have that scene. Um, the other thing, there was a question where like they Dina and Ellie are talking about like their first kills. I think Dina's trying to be a little bit like cheeky. Oh, did you look that up?
It was Hotline Miami. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, great game. But yeah, so they're talking about like their first kills, and then Ellie's like, "Oh, mine's my first actual one is too painful." She
Yeah.
must be referring to her mother, right?
Oh, I thought she was referring. Oh, that's a good.
Because she does mention, oh, I forget his name, but the deaf boy from season one. That's
Yeah.
what she says is her first kill. But I think, because she's like, yeah, my first kill is too sad to talk about. My thinking was like, oh, she's probably thinking it was like her mom who she killed, obviously when she was born, and I just thought that was like such a great little detail if that is the case.
Yeah.
Um, and and then it kind of made me start thinking like, oh, like how did she find out about that, and like was she, because she grew up in this orphanage in Boston and everything, like did they make fun of her for that, like how did that kind of weigh on her?
Yeah.
It actually added a lot just from that like one little line for me. So I'm glad they added that. But
Yeah. No, that's a good. At first, because I first thought it was her girlfriend, like friend slash girlfriend, but that wouldn't make
oh
sense
right,
because she turned. That was like the whole thing. They both thought they were going to turn. And yeah, she probably did kill her when she turned, but that's not the same as killing. At least I don't feel like it's the
true.
same thing.
Yeah, actually, I
It's
can't
it would be
remember if she
messy
killed.
for sure. It would be fucked up, like she said, but I
Yeah.
like the idea that she counts her mom as being the
Hmm.
first person she killed. It's very
Yeah.
sad, but
Yeah. Right. Right. But yeah.
yeah, she was so. I love Ashley Johnson. She was so good in that episode.
I know. I know. It'd be great if we saw more, but honestly, I
Yeah,
from a if I was running the show, I would not have more with her. It's like it's good as it is, but I just
yeah,
love seeing her there.
yeah. No, same. But yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with this one, or we
I
good?
think that was yeah, pretty much it for me. I mean, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next. And Seattle looked incredible in those wide
Mm,
shots. I mean, it's straight up from the game, and better than the game. And yeah, the show's going to get a lot darker. I think you know
yeah,
having 2 seasons of this is going to be like, man, what are they going to do to like balance it being too violent and kind of too like the game, basically. So I'm
the
interested.
game is like insanely violent.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like. I think Ellie may kill a few random wolves here and there, but it's not going to be like the game where you're going and like killing like 10 people and like,
Yeah.
you know, breaking their arm with like a hammer and then smashing their head in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of it is optional. You can kind of like get through these, but it's actually way
I
harder
was,
to do
yeah,
that.
I
Yeah.
was always about that smoke. I was like, all right, let's fucking do this.
No, me too. I love like sneak games and sneaking and like it's just yeah, for that, even just for that, it's like such a great game.
Mm,
It's hiding in the the long grass and like jumping in a house and yeah, it's
yeah.
so good.
There's like one moment I really remember where you're playing in the neighborhood, area,
I think I know what you're
and
talking about.
like
Yeah.
it was like near the end of the fight where I think it was like the last person, and like with Ellie, I like jumped off a deck and like stabbed the person like jumping down, and I
Oh,
was like, "This is the greatest game ever made."
yeah, dude,
So
like
insane.
the animations are just crazy. I mean, I guess maybe not animation is not the right word, but just like the level of detail that they put into like however you do it is crazy because it's always like very realistic and like this is gonna sound gruesome, but like if you shoot someone in the head and like they're near like a wall, like their brains are literally on the wall and then they start like trickling. It's like just so detailed and crazy.
Yeah,
And I mean, it is HBO, so maybe they will go fully,
yeah,
fucking crazy with it, but we'll see.
yeah. It's so insane. If you watch that documentary, they did like these show them like testing, like, okay, what would blood look like on this kind of a jacket, in the rain, and they're like, testing it like fake blood with
Right.
water on the jacket so that they can animate the blood like coming down correctly. Like they went so above
Crazy.
and beyond,
Yeah.
which makes me so excited for their next game. Like I can't wait to see like what kind of freaky alien shit they got us killing in that.
It's wild.
Yeah. All right. So, should we wrap it up? Anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
Nope, just follow Better Radio, follow Wicked Good Everything, and yeah.
Yeah. Did an episode on Wicked Good Everything about the last episode and how the show's being adapted and everything so far. So, if you could check that out, we really appreciate it. We also have Wicked Good Sports and Those Fake Nerds, as well as, of course, Better Radio, where we have all of our podcasts. So, yeah, other than that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.